On the distant planet of Veralia, beauty and strength filled the cities, but behind every smiling face of a Verelian woman, there was a hidden fear. Every female was born with a strange genetic flaw. It was called the heart weakening at birth. They looked healthy, they grew fast, and they lived full of energy. But once they reached the age of 29, the flaw began to show. Their hearts would slowly lose power, and before their 30th birthday, they would die. No doctor could stop it. No medicine could change it. Long ago, there was a cure. The cure was written in an ancient formula, but it was lost during the Great War. Many believed it was gone forever. Others whispered that the cure was hidden somewhere in the universe, waiting for someone to find it. For hundreds of years, the Verelian Council watched as women died young, leaving families broken and dreams unfinished. Then came the discovery: human DNA was different. It could stop the heart weakening. It could give the flawed women a chance to live. Scientists tested it and confirmed the truth. The cure was not a pill, not a machine, but a bond. If a flawed woman bonded with a human mate before her 30th birthday, her heart would grow stronger. She would live a full life. The news spread across the galaxy. The Verelian Council made a new law. Every flawed woman must be paired with a human mate before her time ran out. Many women accepted. Many even welcomed it, but some resisted. Some saw it as a loss of freedom, as if they were being told who to love. Leora was one of them. She was a tall, graceful woman with silver hair that shone under Verelia's twin suns. Her eyes were bright violet, but they carried a stubborn fire. Leora was 29. She knew her time was short, but she refused to follow the Council's law. She believed she could live her own way, without depending on a human. She told herself that if death was her fate, she would face it with dignity. That belief began to break the day the Council sent her a message. It was an official notice. Her bond candidate had been chosen. His name was Ethan Cole, a human from Earth. He was already on his way to meet her. Leora read the message with a mix of anger and disbelief. She decided she would send him back the moment he arrived. But fate had other plans. The night Ethan's ship landed, the skies over her city burned with flashes of light. Leora's home security system screamed an alarm. She rushed to the window and saw black armored figures dropping from hovercrafts. They moved fast, breaking into houses, dragging out women. Leora's heart pounded. She had heard rumors of mercenaries hunting flawed women to sell them on the black market. She had never believed it was true until now. Before she could act, her door exploded inward. The force threw her to the floor. Smoke filled the room. Through the haze, a tall figure stepped in. He wore dark combat gear, but his face was uncovered. He had sharp brown eyes, a scar across his jaw, and the calm focus of a soldier. "Leora," he said, his voice firm. "We need to go, now," she realized. It was Ethan Cole, her assigned bond candidate. She wanted to tell him to leave. But another blast shook the walls. The mercenaries were inside. Ethan grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back exit. She resisted for a moment, but the sound of boots and shouting voices grew closer. They ran into the dark streets. Hovercrafts roared overhead, sending beams of light searching for escapees. Ethan moved like he knew every corner, every shadow, guiding her through narrow alleys. At one point, a mercenary spotted them. Ethan turned and fired a small plasma weapon, dropping the attacker instantly. Leora's breath came in short bursts, not just from running, but from the shock of the night's events. They left the city and entered the wide-open fields under the twin moons. The grass glowed faintly in the alien light. Ethan didn't slow until they reached a ridge overlooking a deep valley. He scanned the horizon, then looked at her. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "Someone wants you dead before you turn 30. Leora narrowed her eyes. "And you expect me to believe you're here to save me," she said, her tone sharp. Ethan met her gaze without flinching. "I'm here because if we don't move fast, you won't have a chance to decide anything." Her mind raced. She didn't trust him. She didn't trust humans. But she could not ignore the truth. Someone had tried to kill her, she thought. About the law she hated, the cure she didn't want, and the clock that was already ticking, somewhere deep inside. Fear whispered that she might not have as much time as she thought. Ethan checked his scanner. "We need to head for the mountains," he said. "They won't risk chasing us there at night." Leora hesitated for a moment longer, then followed him into the shadows. Her heart was still strong for now, but every step she took felt heavier, as if fate itself was closing in. The mountain path was steep and narrow. The wind carried a cold bite. Leora followed Ethan in silence. Her silver hair moved in the breeze like a ribbon of light. She hated the feeling of being led, but the night's attack had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Ethan moved with quiet confidence. His boots found steady ground. His eyes scanned the shadows as if danger could appear at any moment. He didn't speak much, and when he did, it was only to tell her where to step or when to duck. It annoyed her, but it also kept her alive. By dawn, they reached a hidden cave high above the valley. From here, the city was a cluster of tiny lights. Far in the distance, smoke still rose from some areas, proof that the mercenaries had caused chaos. Leora leaned against the cave wall, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Ethan handed her a small pack. Inside were dried fruits, protein strips, and a canister of water. "I don't need your charity," she said coldly. Ethan didn't react. "It's not charity," he replied. "It's survival." He sat near the entrance, keeping his weapon within reach. Leora ate in silence, trying not to show her hunger. Finally she spoke. "Why are you here, really?" Ethan looked at her. "Because you're a target," he said simply. "And because whether you like it or not, my blood can keep you alive." She frowned. "You mean the bond?" Ethan nodded. "It's not just a law, it works. Human DNA can stop the heart weakening, but the bond takes time. It needs trust. And right now, you don't trust me." His calm tone irritated her. "Trust is not given. It's earned," she said sharply. Ethan's lips curved into a faint smirk. "Then I'll earn it." They stayed in the cave through the day, resting and listening for signs of pursuit. Around midday, they heard faint sounds from the valley below, engines, shouting, and the metallic hum of hovercrafts. The mercenaries were still searching. Leora's stomach tightened. Whoever wanted her gone had power and resources. This wasn't random. That night, they moved again. Climbing higher into the mountains, the air grew thin, and Leora's body began to protest. Her legs ached, her chest felt tight. Ethan noticed and slowed his pace. "Your heart," he said quietly. "You're feeling it already." She shook her head. "I'm fine," but she knew he was right. They found shelter under a rock overhang. The stars above were bright and cold. Ethan started a small heat source, and for the first time, Leora allowed herself to sit close to him. The warmth seeped into her bones. "You're different from what I expected," she said finally. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "How so?" Leora hesitated. "I thought humans would be loud, arrogant, always trying to take control." Ethan chuckled. Softly, "Some are," he admitted, "but I'm here to keep you alive, not control you." For a moment, their eyes met. There was no softness, no romance yet, but there was an unspoken understanding. Survival bound them together for now. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the rocks. Ethan stood instantly, weapon ready. From the darkness emerged a beast unlike anything on Earth, a six-legged predator with glowing eyes and teeth like blades. It lunged toward Leora. She froze, instinct locking her in place. Ethan moved fast, shoving her aside and firing 2 plasma shots. The beast roared, its body collapsing just a few steps from her. Leora's breath came in sharp gasps. Ethan knelt beside her. "You need to stay alert," he said firmly. "Out here, hesitation can kill you." She wanted to snap back, but the truth burned in her chest. Without him, she would be dead. She looked at the beast's body, then at Ethan. "Why? Risk yourself for me?" she asked. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "Because you matter," he said simply. "More than you think." They didn't speak much after that, But something had shifted. The space between them felt different. Warmer, Leora tried to ignore it, but her mind kept returning to the way he had stood in front of her without hesitation. As they moved deeper into the mountains the next day, they discovered something unexpected. Hidden between two cliffs was an old, half-buried transport pod. Inside were the remains of another flawed woman, and next to her, a strange device covered in dust. Ethan examined it, his brow furrowed. "This isn't Varelian tech," he said. "It's human." "And old." Leora's heart raced. "What is it doing here?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer immediately. "If I'm right, this could lead us to something bigger than just your cure," he said finally. "But it also means whoever is after. You might be after this too." She stared at him, torn between fear and curiosity. "So what now?" Ethan looked at her with a steady gaze. "Now we run faster, and we trust each other enough to survive." Leora didn't reply, but for the first time she didn't feel completely alone. Somewhere deep inside, a small spark of trust began to burn. The mountains seemed endless. Each step took them higher into the clouds. The air grew colder, sharper, and thinner. Leora's breath came in short bursts, but she refused to show weakness. Ethan walked ahead, his weapon always ready, scanning the rocky slopes for danger. For 2 days they moved deeper into the wild, avoiding open spaces. At night, they took shelter in caves or under stone arches. The strange human device they had found in the transport pod now rested in Ethan's pack. Leora kept glancing at it whenever he checked their supplies. She could feel it carried secrets. On the third evening, they stopped beside a hidden waterfall. The sound of rushing water drowned out the mountain winds. Ethan crouched down, filling their canisters. Leora finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "You knew about this device before you came here, didn't you?" Ethan didn't look at her. "I had a suspicion," he said. "Earth's archives mention a lost research station built on Varelia over 200 years ago. This device. It's from that time, and I think it has data about the original cure for your people." Leora froze. "The original cure," she whispered. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Then why hasn't anyone found it before?" Ethan stood and faced her. "Because someone doesn't want it found. The moment a real cure exists, the council loses control over flawed women, and there are people who profit from keeping you desperate." The words hit her harder than she expected. She had always hated the law, but she had never considered that it might be designed to keep women under control. "You're saying they want us to need human mates forever," she said. Ethan nodded. "Not all of them, but enough." That night, Leora couldn't sleep. The moonlight spilled into their small camp, lighting the edges of the strange device. Her mind was a storm. Anger, fear, hope, all mixed together. If Ethan was right, then her whole life had been shaped by a lie. The next morning, they left the waterfall and climbed toward a ridge. Beyond it, Ethan said, there was an abandoned outpost built during the first human contact with Varelia. If the outpost still stood, it might have a terminal that could connect with the device. By midday, they reached it. The outpost was half buried in snow and stone. Its walls cracked and faded. The front doors were broken, hanging from twisted hinges. Inside, the air was dry and cold. Old human symbols and numbers were still painted on the walls. Ethan found a working terminal in the main room. Dust covered the console, but the screen flickered faintly when he powered it up. He connected the device. Lines of ancient code scrolled across the display. Leora stood beside him, her hands clenched. Suddenly, the screen shifted. A series of medical files appeared, scans, genetic charts, and something else. A video recording. Ethan played it. The image of a human scientist appeared. Her voice was clear despite the age of the file. "This cure is stable. Full restoration of heart function in flawed Varelian women confirmed." Leora's breath caught. "It's real," she said. The scientist continued. "However, the council has ordered all research to be sealed. They claim political instability, but I believe they want dependency to remain." I am hiding this data here, hoping one day it will be found. The file ended. Silence filled the room. Ethan looked at Leora. Now you see why someone is hunting you. You weren't just paired with me to save your life. You were bait. They knew I'd find this. Before she could answer, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the hallway. Leora's heart jumped. Ethan shut down the terminal and grabbed the device. They're here, he said, pulling her toward a side exit. Hallway was narrow, lit only by faint emergency lights. Shadows moved ahead of them, mercenaries in black armor. Blocking the way, Ethan fired first, the blasts lighting the walls in flashes. Leora ducked behind a crate, her ears ringing from the shots. One mercenary rushed forward, grabbing her arm. Leora twisted and drove her elbow into his helmet. The blow made him stumble, and Ethan finished him with a quick shot. They pushed through the exit, running into the snowstorm outside. The wind howled, biting at their skin, but they kept moving. The mountains swallowed them again, and soon the outpost was just a shadow in the white mist. Leora's mind was spinning. The truth was bigger than her survival. As they found shelter in a small cave that night, Ethan handed her a thermal blanket. We can't go back to the city, he said. Not yet, they'll expect it. Leora nodded slowly. Her eyes were fixed on the device. We have to share the cure, she said. Ethan met her gaze. We will, but first, we have to live long enough to do it. That night, Leora lay awake, the storm outside raging like the storm in her heart. She had started this journey determined to reject the bond. Now she wasn't sure if she was running from it or toward it. The storm raged for 2 days without pause. Snow and ice sealed the mouth of their cave like a prison door. The cold crept into their bones despite the heat source Ethan had set up. Leora wrapped the thermal blanket tighter around herself. Her violet eyes kept drifting toward Ethan, who sat sharpening the edge of a survival knife. They had barely spoken since escaping the outpost. The truth they had uncovered still hung between them like an unspoken weight. Leora knew now that her life was never just her own choice. It was part of a game played by powerful hands. On the third morning, she felt the first wave of weakness. It started as a dull pressure in her chest, then a heavy, suffocating tightness. She tried to hide it, turning away, but her breathing grew shallow. Ethan noticed instantly. He moved to her side, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. It's your heart, he said quietly. It's starting. She shook her head stubbornly. I'm fine, but her voice trembled. Ethan's gaze stayed firm. No, you're not. He reached into his medkit and pulled out a small injector. This will help for a few hours, but it's temporary. She stared at the injector, fear and pride battling inside her. Finally, she gave a small nod. Ethan pressed the injector to her neck. A cool sensation spread through her veins. Her breathing eased, the tightness faded. She looked at him, her voice softer now. You've done this before. Ethan gave a faint smile. More times than I'd like to count. They stayed close after that, sharing what little food they had left. At night, the cold forced them to sit side by side. The heat from his body kept her alive in ways she didn't want to admit. One evening, as the wind screamed outside, Leora broke the silence. Why are you really risking your life for me? Ethan looked at the flickering light between them. Because I've seen too many people die while someone could have saved them, he said. And because I don't want to see you die. His voice carried no hesitation, no attempt at charm, only truth. Leora felt something shift inside her. The next day, the storm finally eased. They forced their way out through the snow. The mountains stretched before them, bright under the pale suns. They began moving toward the lower slopes, hoping to find a safe path to the outer settlements. Around midday, they stopped at a cliff edge to rest. From here, they could see the dark line of forest far below. Leora's chest still felt fragile, but she managed to smile faintly at the view. Ethan stood beside her, scanning the horizon with a scope. Suddenly, a sound ripped through the quiet, a deep, guttural roar. Ethan spun, his weapon up. From behind a boulder emerged a massive predator, taller than both of them, its black fur rippling with each step. Its eyes locked on Leora. The creature lunged. Ethan pushed her back and fired. The plasma shot burned into its shoulder. But the beast didn't slow. Leora stumbled, her ankle twisting. Pain shot through her. She fell hard against the rock. Ethan stepped between her and the predator, firing. Again and again. This time, the creature crashed to the ground. Skidding to a stop only a breath away from her, Ethan turned, kneeling beside her. "Are you hurt?" She nodded toward her ankle. "It's just twisted." He wrapped it quickly with a strip of cloth. His hands were steady, his movements gentle. Leora found herself watching his face more than the injury. The sharp lines, the calm eyes, the faint scar, all details she had ignored before. That night, they camped under the open sky for the first time since leaving the city. The stars shimmered like scattered diamonds. Leora lay beside the small fire, her ankle elevated. Ethan sat next to her. Cleaning his weapon, she spoke without looking at him. "When I first met you, I thought you were just another human following orders. And now," Ethan asked, glancing at her. She hesitated. "Now I think you might actually care." Ethan's expression softened. "I do," he said. Simply, they sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Leora felt warmth spread through her chest, not from the flames, but from the truth she had just heard. Her heart still carried the flaw, the countdown still ticked, but something inside her no longer felt so cold. Later that night, as she drifted toward sleep, Leora thought about the bond. She had promised herself she would never accept it, but now, she wasn't sure if refusing it was worth the risk. Not if it meant losing him. Far away, in the darkness beyond the mountains, the mercenaries were still searching. But for the first time since the night her home burned, Leora felt a small spark of hope. It was fragile, but it was enough to keep her moving. The descent from the mountains took 3 days. The air grew warmer, and the snow gave way to rocky slopes and dry plains. Leora's ankle healed enough for her to walk without leaning on Ethan, though he still kept close, always watching the path ahead. By the 4th morning, the jagged skyline of the Varelian capital appeared in the distance. Tall silver towers glistened under the twin suns. Leora stopped, staring at the city she once called home. It looked peaceful from here, but she knew peace was an illusion. Somewhere inside those walls, the truth about the cure was being buried. Again, Ethan's plan was simple. Get the human device to an ally inside the council. Someone who could release the data to the public. Once the people knew the truth, the law-forcing bonds would have no reason to exist. They entered the city through the old market district, blending in with the crowd. Ethan kept his hood up, and Leora wore a long cloak to hide her face. The streets were busy, merchants calling out their goods, children running between stalls. It was almost enough to make her forget the danger. Almost when they reached the council hall, they were met by Minister Kale, a tall man in deep green robes. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Leora had met him before, a respected figure, known for protecting the people. Kale welcomed them with a warm smile. "Leora, you are safe, and you've brought our human guest." Ethan stepped forward. "We have something the council needs to see." Kale's gaze shifted to the vice in Ethan's pack. "Yes. I heard about your discovery in the mountains." His voice was too smooth, too practiced. He led them into a private chamber. The moment the doors closed, guards stepped from the shadows, weapons ready. Ethan's hand moved toward his blaster. But Kale raised a finger. "Please don't make this unpleasant." Leora's heart pounded. "What is this?" she demanded. Kale sighed, as if speaking to a child. "Leora, the cure you found would destabilize everything our society needs. Order. Without the bond law, flawed women would make reckless choices. The system works. You should accept it." Ethan's voice was cold. "The system keeps people under control. That's all it does." Kale's smile vanished. "And control keeps the galaxy from chaos." He nodded to the guards. "Take them 2 guards grabbed Leora's arms. Another forced Ethan to his knees. She fought against them. "Kale, you can't do this." He stepped closer, his voice low. "You're not the first to find the cure, and you won't be the last to disappear for it." They were taken to the lower cells beneath the hall. Dark corridors lit by dim blue lights. The air smelled of metal and damp stone. Leora was thrown into a small cell. Ethan into the one across from hers. The walls were thick, but they could still hear each other. "Looks like your friend in the council isn't much of a friend," Ethan said bitterly. Leora's hands clenched into fists. "Kale was never my friend, but I didn't think he was this." Hours passed. The cold from the stone floor seeped into her bones. Leora sat with her back against the wall, her mind racing. The device was still with Ethan when they were captured. If Kale got his hands on it, the truth would vanish again, late that night. A soft sound came from the corridor, footsteps, then a voice she recognized. "Leora, it's me." A figure appeared at her cell door. It was Rin, a junior council clerk she had once helped years ago. His eyes darted nervously. "I don't have long. Kale is planning your public execution tomorrow. He says it will send a message." Leora's stomach turned. "We need to get the device out," she said quickly. Rin nodded. "I can unlock Ethan's cell. But after that, you're on your own." He tapped a code into the door panel. The lock clicked open. Within moments, Ethan was free. The two of them moved fast, slipping through the service tunnels beneath the hall. The guards above had no idea they were gone yet. As they reached the outer gates, Leora turned to Ethan. "We can't just run. Kale will still have power." Ethan's expression was grim. "Then we take his power away in front of everyone." He pulled the device from his pack. "We're going to show the cure to the entire city, and Kale won't be able to stop it." For the first time since stepping into the capital, Leora felt the old fire return to her chest. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. Asterisk. The dawn sky over Veralia glowed with the soft light of the twin suns, but the streets of the capital buzzed with a darker energy. Word had already spread. The council would execute Leora today. Crowds gathered in the central square, not knowing the real reason for her arrest. Hidden in the shadow of an old supply tower, Leora adjusted the hood of her cloak. Ethan stood beside her, the device secure in his pack. His eyes scanned the crowd, looking for the perfect moment. "Once we show the recording, Kale's lies will fall apart," Ethan said quietly. Leora nodded. "And if we fail?" she asked. Ethan's voice stayed steady. "Then we don't get a second chance." The square was surrounded by tall platforms and glowing banners of the council. At the center stood the execution stage, a wide metal platform raised above the people. Minister Kale waited there, dressed in his green ceremonial robes. His voice echoed across the square as he addressed the crowd. "Today," Kale announced, "we remove a dangerous influence from our society. This woman has defied the laws that keep our people safe." His words were met with a mix of cheers and uneasy murmurs. Leora felt heat rise in her chest. She had been silent for too long. Ethan gave her a quick glance. "We move when I give the signal." They slipped into the crowd, weaving between people until they were close enough to see the guards' faces. Kale's personal soldiers stood at the base of the platform, their weapons ready. Ethan took a small device from his pocket, a signal jammer. He activated it, and the guards' comms went silent, confusion flashing in their eyes. "Now," Ethan whispered. They pushed forward, climbing the side steps before the soldiers could react. The crowd gasped as Leora appeared beside Kale, pulling down her hood. "This law is a lie," she shouted, her voice carrying over the square. "We found the cure, a cure that means no woman needs to die before 30. And no woman needs to be forced into a bond she doesn't choose." Kale's face darkened. "Seize her," he barked. But before the guards could move, Ethan stepped forward and held up the device. His voice rang out. "Every screen in this city will see this." He pressed a button. and the image of the old human scientist filled the giant display panels around the square. The recording played. The scientist's voice was clear, speaking of the full cure, of the council's order. To hide it. Gasps and shouts erupted from the crowd. The people turned toward Kale, their faces hardening. "This is manipulation." Kale tried to protest, but the voices of the crowd grew louder. Some shouted for the truth, others demanded Kale step down. Ethan handed the device to Leora. "Tell them yourself," he said. She took a deep breath. "For years, we have been told we are broken, that we can only live if we follow the council's command. But we are not broken. We have been lied to." Her voice shook, but her eyes stayed locked on the crowd. "The cure belongs to all of us, not to those in power." A soldier near Kale raised his weapon, but before he could fire, another guard stepped forward and blocked him. "Enough," the guard said loudly. "I've seen too many die because of this law." More soldiers lowered their weapons, and the tension in the square shifted. Kale's calm broke. "You fools, without control. There will be chaos," he shouted. Ethan stepped closer, his voice cold. "The only chaos here is the truth you tried to bury." The crowd surged forward, voices rising in a chant for freedom. Kale's remaining loyal guards tried to hold them back, but the people pushed through. In the chaos, Kale turned to flee. Ethan caught his arm, pulling him back onto the stage. "You'll answer for this," Ethan said. Two soldiers stepped forward, not to protect Kale, but to take him into custody. The crowd roared as the minister was led away. Leora looked out over the square, her chest heaving for the first time. In her life, she felt the weight of the law lifting. The people's voices were no longer silenced, and the cure, their cure, was finally in the open. Ethan moved to her side. "We're not finished," he said softly. "We still need to make sure the cure is produced and given freely." Leora met his eyes. "Then we finish it together." The square was still loud with cheers when they stepped down from the stage, but now, instead of running from the crowd, they walked through it side by side. The days after Kale's arrest moved like a blur. The city was alive with change. The people demanded action, and for once, the council listened. Scientists from both Veralia and Earth worked together in open labs, using the recovered data to create a full cure for the heart weakening. Leora walked through the medical wing of the capital's largest research center. Watching as women lined up for treatment, the fear in their eyes was replaced with cautious hope. Some held the hands of their families. Others stood alone but smiling. It felt unreal after centuries. The countdown that haunted every flawed woman was ending. Ethan stood near one of the observation windows, speaking quietly with a human doctor. When he saw Leora, he excused himself and joined her. "It's working," he said. "No more forced bonds, no more dying before 30. Leora's lips curved into a small smile. "That was the goal," she said, but her voice carried a shadow. Ethan noticed it. "Something's still on your mind," she hesitated, looking down at her hands. "If the cure works, I don't need you anymore," she said quietly. "Not to survive." Ethan's expression didn't change, but his voice softened. "You never needed me just to survive, Leora. You needed me to stand with you when no one else would." Her violet eyes lifted to his, searching for something unspoken. "And now," she asked, "when the fight is over, what happens to us?" Ethan took a slow breath. "That's not a question for the council or the cure. It's your choice." That night, the city held a celebration in the central square. The same place where Kale had tried to destroy her was now filled with music, light, and laughter. People danced, vendors gave away food, and the sky glowed with streams of colored light from the celebration towers. Leora walked through the crowd, her cloak brushing against the cobblestones. She stopped near the stage where the announcement of the cure had been made. Memories flooded back, the fear, the defiance. The moment she chose to speak, Ethan appeared beside her. "No, who'd this time?" His scar caught the light, but his smile was softer than she'd ever seen. "Strange to stand here without soldiers trying to kill us." he said with a faint grin. She laughed, the sound surprising even herself. I think I prefer it this way. For a moment, they simply stood there, watching the crowd. Then Leora turned to him. When this started, I didn't want the bond. I thought it was a chain. And now, Ethan asked. His tone was gentle, but there was something steady behind it. Now, she said slowly, I think the real chain was fear. And I don't want to live by fear anymore. She stepped closer, her hand finding his. So if I choose, it's because I want you, not because I have to. Ethan's fingers tightened around hers. He didn't say anything at first, but the look in his eyes was enough. In the noise of the celebration, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. Later, as the music swelled and the lights painted the night sky, Leora looked around at her city, at her people, at the women who would now live full lives without counting the years. And she realized something. Survival had brought them together, but choice would keep them there. Ethan leaned closer, his voice just for her. So partner, where do we go next? She smiled. Anywhere the stars will take us. They walked into the crowd, hand in hand, disappearing into the sea of voices and light. The story of the flawed women had ended, but theirs was just beginning.